man looked at the old horse and looked back at the farmer, who just stood there repeating, "Yep, old Warwick can do the job." Well, the man figured he had nothing to lose. The two men and Warwick made their way back to the ditch. The farmer hitched the horse to the car. With a snap of the reins, he shouted, "Pull, Fred! Pull, Jack! Pull, Ted! Pull, Warwick!" And the old Clydesdale put his head down and pulled the car from the ditch. The man was amazed, thanked the farmer, patted the Clydesdale, and said, "Why did you call out all those other names before you called Warwick?" And the farmer grinned and said, "Old Warwick is a trooper. His teammates have all passed away now, but when he believes he's part of the team, he puts his head down and he pulls with all his might." Now the Clydesdale must have heard the verse I preached on last week. "Whatsoever your hand finds to do it with your might." Clydesdale version. "Whatsoever your hoof finds to do it with your might." You know, King David was Israel's most successful king. Had an elite fighter force known as the 30. Out of this 30, in the elite force, 3 champions stood out. They were without rivals, even within the 30. That's how good they were. One night, the 3 overheard David sighing for a drink from the well of Bethel, which was behind Philistine lines. So, desiring to please David, the 3 passed through the enemy lines, drew water from the well at Bethel. They came back and successfully presented it to David. But David couldn't accept it because the price of it was so high. These men, his very best, had risked their lives for their commander to get him a drink of water. The gift actually represented their lifeblood, and so he couldn't drink the water. And in order to remain in his own integrity and yet demonstrate loyalty to his men's efforts, he drew upon a Middle Eastern custom, poured it out to God as a libation, and let it run into the ground. Now, the first thing to note about these team players was their legendary loyalty to David. How was that loyalty won? David, remember, killed Goliath of Gath. He did this when all of Israel was in fear of this huge man. David was the sort of person who thought outside the box. For hour after hour, he practiced on the hillside with his slingshot and became an expert with it. It was his weapon of choice. For King Saul, who was quaking in his boots due to fear of Goliath, Saul believed that David had to wear armor. David tried it all on, but abandoned the project and instead went out to meet Goliath with no defensive weapons, only a slingshot. We all know the story. David let go a stone, which struck Goliath in the forehead, and Goliath was no more. Now, David's reputation after this exploit grew by leaps and bounds. He was a superb military strategist, winning campaign after campaign against the Philistines. And over the years, David's men came to trust his instincts and were fiercely loyal to him. Many times, David daringly risked his life for his men and they for him. When his son Absalom started an insurrection, David's loyal followers stuck by him and the insurrection failed. Before anything else, this is what team players must learn. They're loyal to the team and loyal to the leader. See, loyalty is a very great virtue. Once you've experienced true loyalty under fire, you never forget it. I want today to look at what are the characteristics of great team players. Well, the mighty 3 score highly on them all. Number 1, they were cooperative. They did this daring act together to lift David's morale and that of his troops. Do we cooperate with others when we really think if we want a job done well, we should do it ourselves? I tend to do that. You know, if so, we're not team playing. The three were proactive with a creative solution. Do you wait for others to take the lead, or are you proactive? The three thought outside the box, just like King David. They were flexible. They were teachable. You don't get to be a good team player except by being in a constant state of learning. They were courageous risk takers. They were far more interested in David's wishes than their own safety. Fourth, they were all in. They wanted to demonstrate their all-in loyalty and love for David. They wanted to see the project through to its completion, i.e. water in the hands of their leader that he had asked for, and they weren't going to stop until they'd achieved that goal. Fifth, they were respectful and aware of each other's skill sets and let the other persons on the team run to their strengths. The three had learned to listen well, and so they overheard David's wish. They paid deep all-in attention to their commander. They could have passed it off as a casual comment about a well. For them, it became an immediate challenge. 7, the three were effective communicators with the team. You don't go behind enemy lines unless you're all on the same page. You communicate the strategy and go for it together with the plan, with flex for changing circumstances and dangers. 8, the three were absolutely dependable. If they said they were going to do something, they did it without fail. They were the sort of team players who say, "Consider it done." Do we at Knox play like that? I think many of us do. The three were enthusiastic about the project. The adventure was huge, the goal difficult, the success legendary, if they achieved it. They knew it would lift the spirits of the rest of David's elite men. They knew that enthusiasm was contagious and would inspire others. But this enthusiasm had to be for the team and the project. Couldn't do it alone and grab the credit for themselves. 10, the three were solution-oriented, non-complainers. They were not just going to let their commander's wishes hang in the air. They were going to act and come up with a solution. Cup of water from the Bethel well, no matter what it took to achieve. 11, the three were prepared. They need a container that was portable, capped, and strong. They need an intimate knowledge of the target and the location and how well it was guarded. They needed to know where were the weak points in the enemy's lines. Who would guard? Who would be the one to lower the bucket and get the precious water? Oh yes, the three, in order to be successful, had to be prepared in so many ways. There is no substitute for team experience and practical know-how. Lastly, trust. Once you've been there for somebody, this will cause them to want to be there for you. Trust is key to everything. Trust is the speed key to getting things done. You don't trust people, it takes a very, very long time to get anything done. Look at the American Congress. If we know our teammates will be in our corner no matter what, we can do great things together. These were the secrets of the mighty three. You know, there was a jet fighter in the war in Vietnam by the name of Charles Plumb. He completed 75 combat missions when he was shot down. Now, Plumb was ejected and parachuted into enemy hands after spending 6 years in a Vietnamese prison. He finally survived and today gives lectures on the many lessons he learned. One day, when he was eating at a restaurant with his wife, a man came out and said, "You're Plumb, aren't you? You flew jet fighters in Vietnam from the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. You were shot down." "Well, how in the world did you know that?" said Plumb. "I packed your parachute," the man replied. Charles Plumb, in surprise and gratitude, had to catch his breath. The man shook his hand and said, "I guess it worked." Tom assured him it had, and he said, if your chute packing hadn't worked, I wouldn't be here today. So that night, Tom couldn't sleep. Kept pondering what he might have looked like in a Navy uniform. You know, a Dixie cup hat, a bib on the back, bell-bottom trousers. He wondered how many times he might have seen him not even said good morning, or how are you, or anything, because you see, he was a fighter pilot, and the other guy was just a sailor. Tom thought a lot about that man who had packed his parachute and the hours he spent at the wooden table at the bottom of the ship, carefully packing his and other people's chutes. When he held in his hands that chute, he held the fate of someone he didn't even know. Now, Charles Plumb is a motivational speaker telling his story to hundreds, and he always asks his audience after telling the chute story, who's packing your parachute? You know, Knox is doing really well at the present because we do have good teamwork, and packing the parachutes is vital. There are three major challenges Knox faces at the present. Number one, the search for just the right minister. And we've got a search team for that, God bless them. Packing the parachute is to remember them in prayer for a successful search for the minister who is to come. Prayer is quite unseen down on the bottom of the ship at the wooden table, packing the parachute. The search team will not be successful without prayer. It's not easy to be on the search team. They need to know that the parachute packers are behind them before liftoff. The second challenge we have in Knox is to build small groups. Each small group is a team pulling for Knox and each other around a theme. It's the little things that matter: the planning, the time, the constant checking in and contacting. Who's packing the parachute for these groups? And have we joined one? The third most important priority is to get church attendance up, and that requires a lot of parachute packing. Asking people to come to be with you at church. Follow up with a lunch or a coffee. There's the advertising, the fellowship time afterwards, tracking people's welfare in such things as bereavement, health issues, loneliness. It's all about loving people. We all need to do this, packing carefully each other's parachute before takeoff. And the challenge? The well at Bethel does have water in it. It may be in the center of the enemy camp. It may be in the middle of a trend that's going the wrong way. But the water is there. Remember what David said in the 23rd Psalm? Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. There's water in the well and food on the table. Let's go for it.